Hello and welcome to this very beautiful Wednesday evening in the United Kingdom. I tell you, it is Dubai heat in London, and of course, we're not prepared for it because we don't often have ACs in our homes. But you know what? We're grateful all the same. Welcome to the show. Great to have you with us. Tonight, we're going to be discussing our education system. Um, how do we expect to get, what we need in order for us to achieve our dreams is what we're having the conversation about tonight. But in so doing, we're going to be looking at the UK educational structure, how it works for our young people. We're going to look at what COVID has done. We're going to look at, the effects or the impact of racism, if it's there, if it's not there, how these biases affect or doesn't affect us. We're also going to be looking at, what we should be doing. Do we understand the system sufficiently in order to be able to not only engage with it, but have it benefit us in a way that it should? And my guest tonight is the head of maths in her school. She's been teaching for 14 solid years. So I think, she has quite enough experience through the system to be able to, guide us through, talk us through tonight and what we should not be doing and what is out there. So please join me and welcome Pamela Adodo to the show. Pamela, you're welcome to the show. How are you?
Hi, Priscilla. Thanks for having me on the show.
It's such a pleasure to have you. How are you doing on this wonderful Wednesday evening? As I said,
Trying to keep cool. I think that's what we're trying to be cool.
How are you keeping cool?
I've got two fans.
Okay, no less, just two.
Just I'm in a small room, so two fans.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Well, it's amazing that for me, I have a huge fan in my sitting room. And sometimes it feels as if I'm just blowing the warm air. It's still just, I'm looking for other ways to cool the house down. But anyway, thank you for being here. 14 years in the education system is not a joke at all. How have you done it?
I found myself in teaching. When I said found myself, I found who I really was.
Okay.
What I wanted to do. And that's what kept me going. I love teaching.
Wow.
The best times of the day for me are when I'm standing in front of a class and teaching, and we're bantering, we're talking, learning, and those are the best times of the day for me.
Oh, that's fantastic, because nothing beats, doing what you're born to do. You do it without thinking, you do it with so much joy, you do it with a lot of satisfaction. I want to believe that that's what you've just described just then.
Yes, it is.
So let's set the foundation here before we sort of go into it. I want you to talk to us about the British educational structure, because I think we all use the system. We all go in and out of education. Our children go in and out of the education, but do we really understand the structure, how it's set up, and how it's supposed to work for us?
Okay, so starting from the cradle, you have an AYFS system, 0 to 5. By the time a child is age 1, they'll be in the connection year. YFS education consists of nursery education, early education where they learn basic skills.
Yeah.
By 6, they should be the primary, starting primary school, so 101. And then it's split into key stages. So the end of year 2. The end of Keys 1, and then you start stage 2, lower Key stage 3 and 4, and then upper Key stage 5 and 6. At the end of Key stage 2, the end of year 6 an exam. And then those set of they also have a set of results at the end of Key stage 1, the phonics test and an assessment. Those prepare them for the where we start counting more. At the end of the stats, because the two stats are a prediction of what the end of the outcome should be. So when you see us putting a lot of emphasis on the stats, it's because you use a measure. So the base measure is every child should actually a standard of 100 points. and then that's expected. Any child that goes beyond that above expected, and you have a below expected. So any child is not quite at 100. Someone just said my line is echoing.
Yes, I was just thinking. I've also had noticed that you're echoing. Do you happen to have two devices on per adventure?
No, just one.
Do you have a device close to you per adventure that may be on? Although I can't hear the echo we can't hear the echo here in the studio, but those watching can hear the echo.
All right. Is that better? No, it's not. Hold on.
Something is on that is causing it to do that. But let's continue and see what happens.
Is that better now?
It's going to be from those who are watching. Hi everyone watching. Is it better? If it's better, please notify us. Please send me a message again. Thank you. My sound with you is fine. I can hear you perfectly fine but for those watching, I think I can hear something now.
Okay. Are we back?
Yeah, like I said, we're good here. Hold on, I'm coming. Let me just hear. I've got somebody messaging me on this. Hold on.
All right, hold on. I've just been told I've got two mics.
You're echoing.
So I'm going to disable one of the mics.
Hold on a second for me. Can you use a headset with your computer? Maybe the headset would cut out the echo. Now I can't hear you. I just love technology. It's amazing, you know. But this is where they want us all to be now. It's off. Okay. All right, so. Right. Okay. I can't hear you, Pam. Speak to me. Pam? Pam, can you hear me? Okay, you're much better now. Your sound is better, but I can't hear you. Pam, can you hear me? I can't hear you. I don't know why I can't
hear me now.
Yay, welcome back.
Okay.
Okay.
Is that better?
Yes, that's good. All right, that's good. Okay, so you were mentioning the fact that they take those tests at Key Stage 1, and you were saying that it has a bearing on the GCSE results.
Yeah, so we use them as addiction markers. We use them to suggest where a child should end up at key stage 4.
Right.
We also use them to track their education. By the time a child is 7, they have a big grade. So if you're coming at grade 4, at the very low end, minimum pass grade of 5, that's your exam at the end. And there are skilled grades, and these are based on years of educational research about how form. So throughout the year, every track at the end of the every teacher should find the child is on track to get their experience, and if not, we start interventions.
Okay. There's still a bit of echo with you, but it's a bit better, I'm being told. But then I am struggling to hear you clearly now. You're kind of bleeping in and out.
So what's my speaker, my mic, just feeding back off each other.
Oh, you have a speaker there and not your laptop speaker?
I'm using a desktop. So the desktop
Okay.
is feeding back.
It shouldn't feed back though. That's weird. It shouldn't feed back. Okay.
Is that better now?
Yeah, I can hear you now, but it's for those watching. That's bad. All right, what we might have to do, for the sake of this, is we may just have to go without the visual. We may just have to go without the visual. Because it's sometimes when it's like that, it's overloaded, and it's probably better to just go without the visual.
Okay.
Is this better?
This is better.
How are we doing, sir? Is this better? Yeah, but okay. Okay. Let's do you know what? Just take off your camera. Let's just do your voice.
Okay.
Yeah, let's just go with your voice.
Better?
Yeah, that's better. Let's work with that. Let's see how that goes.
I'm just trying to get another device that can get less echo from that.
You're trying to get what? Sorry.
Another device.
Another device.
Another laptop.
Let's continue with this. Yeah, because that could take, you know.
Okay. Carry on. As I said, we start with the year 7th grade, and then from there we go on to measure whether I'm pretty good. It's also a good indicator. We don't have to do it by the wayside.
You said it's also a good indication, because then we don't have to do what? Sorry, I didn't catch that bit.
Sorry, we don't have kids who fall behind.
Okay, yes.
And when they start behind, we're able to catch early.
Okay. Pam, I am struggling to hear you. Sir, can we restart? Because I can't hear. So just stay there for me. I'm so sorry for everybody that's watching. Just bear with us. We're going to get this fixed in just a moment. Hello again, everybody. Thank you for staying with us. My sincere apologies for that. We had a slight hiccup just then, you know, technology. I think the sun is also getting to all of our computers and wires and systems. Anyway, if you've just joined us, tonight we're talking about education, as I said top of the show, our conversation tonight centers around how are we getting what we need in order for us to achieve our dreams. And we're looking at the UK educational structure. We're looking at, how it is set up. We're looking at the impact of COVID. We're looking at, today with the conversation about the children's exams results that's been, going on throughout this week. And my guest today, if you've not met her as yet, has been a teacher for 14 solid years. So I believe she's more than, capable of telling us exactly how the system works and what is there and, and how we interact with it ourselves. So let's welcome her. Let's not keep her holding any longer. So you're welcome to the show, Pamela Adodo. Good evening, Pam. How are you once again? Pam? Pam, where are you? I can't hear you. I heard you a moment ago. Where did you go? Right. I have no idea what's happened to my guest or where she's disappeared to. She was right here a moment ago. I could hear her voice. So bear with me once again. And I should go up into cyberspace and see if I can find her. So please stay with me. I'll be right back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Pam, are you there?
I am, yes.
Hooray! At last. Okay, so I am going to rely on all of you now that are watching to please let me know her sound, because obviously we can't hear what's going on at home, but she sounds perfectly clear in the studio here. So if it's not coming through clearly, please do let me know, what you can hear. So as I was saying, as we were saying earlier, we mentioned the fact that we were on the point. You made mention of the fact that the SATs, although they're taking at age 11 plus, as it were, but it is later used when we get to the age of 15, and we're talking about GCSEs. Will it be okay if we go over that again, please?
Yeah. So we use them as predictions. As prediction measures for the future. So depending on where the child falls in, the lowest score at key stage 2 is 80, and the highest is 120. The median is 100. So if a child falls within those ranges, we take them through the whole GCSE ranking from grade 9 to grade 1 or below, because there are children who don't necessarily make SAT scores because of special or severe learning difficulties.
Yeah.
But every child has a measure at the end of year 6 to use as a prediction. So we schools use it as a prediction of what this child's outcomes should be, what their attainment outcomes should be. Attainment outcomes basically meaning grades. What grades should a child get in this grade? So if a child comes in as a grade score of 100, but then one we're expecting that child is going to get a grade 5 across the board as a minimum. It doesn't mean that they will get above, below that, or they're only limited to that. It just means that they should, as a minimum, get a grade 5. So when a child's not getting a grade 5, it's a worry for the teacher, the parents, and the child, and we all start to work together to get that child the grade.
Wow, now that's really interesting because, for most parents, I think we all believe that we're doing the SATs to get into the secondary schools, but we're not actually aware that the SATs is not just a matter of getting into the secondary schools, but it still flags up throughout that secondary school education right through to the end.
It does. And there's also something called a CAT score, which schools use as a measure. It's just a measure of, it's not intelligence, but how well the child works. Settings. And we have all these measures that we use throughout the year, throughout the years in secondary school to get the child prepared for their first external exam, if you like.
Wow. Thank you so much for that. That's, let me be honest with you, that's really just blown me away, just hearing that, because all along, I mean, I don't have a child at that stage at the minute, but once upon a time I did. And all along, we all push for the SATs. We would do all the, sometimes referred to as Cambridge and Oxford revision and all of that, for the SATs. And usually we looked at it, most parents looked at it for being able to get into a better school. But it's interesting to learn that it's not just about getting into a better school, but it takes you right the way through. It has a bearing. So, for you, I mean, we're in a very interesting season at the moment, the pandemic season, and this pandemic season has thrown up so many different things. The issue of bias, the fact that children could not go to school. I feel like I have so much to talk to you about, and I'm just, I feel like I'm rushing ahead of myself with regards to, what we should be discussing. But let's take it one step at a time. As I was saying, the pandemic has had a huge impact on all of us, but more than anything, it's sort of thrown up so many different things at the moment, not just for our children's education, the fact that they weren't able for so many to continue at school and to take their exams for those who are at that crucial GCSE A-level stages. But also, we're hearing a lot about those who are going to be much more affected because they lack the precious education that they should be getting at the moment. It's thrown up the biases. We know that racism has featured a great deal. Off the back of the death of George Floyd, we've seen an array of conversations there. So the system is set up that way. Now, tell me something, because something we have heard a lot of it makes the headlines all the time, is the fact that we have young black boys that are more excluded from our educational system than we do other children. Now, I think it's important for me to state here that whilst I was looking into this, I noted that it is not the so much that more young black boys are kicked out of school or expelled. When you consider, however, the number that make up the percentage within society, young black boys are 3 times more likely to be expelled. That's not, white children are also expelled at very high proportionate level, but then, they make up the majority. In your experience as a teacher, talk us through the process. How do we get to this process of, young black boys being expelled? Is it just a case of, they're just being expelled, or is it just a case of there are factors and there are stages before we get to that point?
So the first thing I'd like to say, and in terms there is bias, but the bias is not what results in an exclusion. Before a school gets to the position where they find it's not something that schools take seriously, and it's often the last thing on our mind. Now, I've taught in schools with children who face very, very difficult circumstances where they, for a variety of reasons, they find themselves on the wrong side of the law. And I can speak in one instance in the school I work in. A child was brought into school by the police because he spent the night. He'd been apprehended for going, for being on the wrong side of the law. Right. And it wasn't our decision at that point to exclude the child. So that's just to buttress the fact that schools don't exclude willy-nilly, and they don't exclude black boys willy-nilly. They don't exclude black children. The decision to bring a child to the point of exclusion is usually when the school has found itself in a position that it cannot further the education of that child anymore, and where there's safeguarding concerns in relation to the child remaining at that. I'm going to pick my words very carefully. I'll give you a couple of scenarios.
Please
do. Where a child has brought a knife to school, and we've had those instances, or they've brought dangerous weapons to school, drugs, anything, our immediate decision will not be to exclude, it will be to provide intervention. Okay. Now, when this persists and the child starts distributing or the child starts recruiting other children in the school, you see that the school then has no choice but to remove that child from the setting for the safety of the other children. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, let me be honest with you. Just hearing you say if a child comes in with a knife, if a child comes in with drugs, obviously the primary concern is the safety of other children, as well as the teachers and everybody else, especially if they come in with a knife. When you say the first thing we do is intervention, what exactly is intervention? So the social services will immediately be involved. Okay. The Met Police, so I work in London, the Met Police, the police will be involved, but not from a prosecution point of view, but to provide intervention, and there are charities in and around London that will. Why are the police involved at that point, even though it's only you're saying that they're not to do anything per se, but why then are the police? Is it necessary to involve the police? Because then. So our school, for example, has a community police officer on who would counsel, talk to social action, social intervention as to why you don't want to go down this route, why it's not a good idea. These are the options available to you. They also give opportunities for outside of school education, interventions that would dissuade the child from going down the path of criminality. Okay, so they too, in a sense, sort of have a conversation with the child, is what you're saying? Yeah, not just conversation. So we've got a brilliant female police officer that's in our school all the time, and one of the things she does also is to remove the fear of the police that's found in some urban communities. She's there so that children can approach her and talk to her about issues they might be having. Okay. She's also there as a support system, and not to be our first point for prosecution. I work in what is a challenging part of London, but she's a vital resource for our school. Yeah. Just to help children deal with difficulties. Children, unfortunately, find ourselves in London in the place where children are being recruited into county lines, and she's one of the first port of call that we go to say this child looks like he or she's at risk of being recruited. How can we stop this? Okay, I like the idea of that. So then the child at no point, for instance, it's then sort of blacklisted by the police, and it doesn't at any time go on their record for the future. It depends. So the prosecution, the CPS aspect of it is completely different to what we would do as a school. That's the responsibility for the police and the CPS, depending on the gravity of the crime that's been committed or not committed. I heard. Okay, so I'm speaking. Okay, pause for me for a second, Auntie Pam. I say Auntie Pam.
Anyway, pause for me for a second. I'm asking at the point of, still at the point of the intervention that you made mention of earlier, not necessarily at the point of a crime. Because obviously at the point of a crime, it's beyond, yourself and
Yeah.
it's a crime. So at that point of intervention is what I'm asking the question. The police do not, at that point, I would imagine, blacklist the child or have it listed against them in the future.
No, it doesn't. Unless the crime has been committed, it doesn't.
Okay. So, so as you were saying, there are stages, it takes at least 2 good years before we get to the point of the exclusion. Just talk us through, step-by-step approach, what would tend to happen within those 2 years. The reason why I say that is because I am aware of, a few cases where children have been excluded from school, and when I hear it, I'm just like, oh my God, how, why? But then I want an understanding of the structure and the system, and before we get to that point, so please help me.
About the formula is pretty much the same in most schools. Now, the biggest problem that schools face is the problem of social mobility.
Okay.
And where disadvantaged children are losing out on education, mostly because of, for a variety of reasons, but there's a lot of disruption in lessons, where the lesson and the learning is disrupted and interrupted. So we take a child coming in at year 7 who's a persistent disruptor, consistently disrupting the lessons for a variety of reasons, for very, very many reasons. Now, the school will have its own behavior policy in place where you're not allowed to interrupt the lesson. It's the same as going to the theatre and interrupting. But some children just can't manage their behavior. Some children are dealing with issues. We have children who might come in and not engage simply because they are hungry. It's just that simple. Like they are hungry.
Really?
In England in 2000, they are hungry. They haven't had dinner or breakfast. The last meal they had was the cooked meal we provided the day before they went home.
Wow.
So the child might disrupt or for a variety of reasons, but the first thing will be to remove the child now from the lesson if the disruption continues. It means that 29 others are not learning while you're disrupting the lesson. If the problem that leads us to the point of exclusion is mostly behavior related, whereby the child can't manage their behavior in the lesson, I would say 95% of the child will never come to the point of permanent exclusion. Never.
Okay.
Because by the time the child gets to year 9, the school would have worked hard enough to get the child settled down, would have addressed the other social issues. So where it's poverty or deprivation, lack, whatever it is, there would have been enough intervention. Where a school finds itself at that point is where we have other issues, stuff like weapons, drugs. Those are the things that usually bring us to the point of exclusion.
Wow. That's quite serious to think that children will actually come into school with these weapons, but we see it happen. We hear about it, and
Can I just say something else here? When it comes to persistent disruption, and where a child's not learning, if the school then decides that this child is not fitting into our ethos, the school will institute something called a managed move. So managed move means that you're not good for the school because you're disrupting children. Maybe your friends or whatever is getting the better of you. We're going to put you to another school within our borough where you will learn better, and let's see what we can do for you.
Okay.
So that's why I'm saying the 2 years comes in place where we don't send straight to exclusion. It takes a long time. And, there's a financial implication. There are financial implications in the...
Hold on a minute. Financial implications for who? For the parents? For the school. And how does that work?
Okay, so from the parents' point of view, if the school is too far away for the parent, the school will have to pay for transport to get the child. So, say for example, boy A used to walk to our school.
Okay.
And that was the way he got there. And the school we're moving into means that he will have to take the bus. We have to pay for that bus service.
Oh, okay. So the old school that he was in before will have to pay for the bus service from his home to the new school.
Also, there's a school funding formula. A school funding formula with secondary school means that each child is allocated around averaging £6,000.
Right.
A bit more, bit less, depending on the borough.
Mm-hmm.
But averaging £6,000. £6,000 means 5 children in the class pay for 1 teacher. Now imagine all the teachers. They have a math teacher, science teacher, all the 10 subjects they'll do.
Yeah.
Pay for the lighting, the books. They don't pay for books. They don't pay for their exercises. They don't pay for textbooks. All that goes in there. If we lose one child, we'll still have to pay the other school the £6,000, and we don't have a replacement.
Ah, I see. So if a child is excluded, so I get it now. So what you're saying is that the process is such that, before the exclusion happens, there are, not only other considerations that the school has to take on board, but there's also the consideration of the cost to the school. And that cost will be, and that cost will be, losing that fee payment that the government would have paid for that child for that year, as it were, and they would have to pay it onto another school. That's very interesting. I again, something that I am learning. But thank you for that. I think sometimes when most of us are hearing of this, obviously, because I think for most of the headlines that we hear, we tend to, it's very, very irritating at times and somewhat aggravating.
It's mostly sensationalism.
Yeah. So, but as I said earlier, I think it's important that I repeat it again. When I looked at the numbers, the white children are getting, just as expelled, if not more expelled, than what our black children are. Unfortunately, however, because of the number that we make up within society, our numbers, obviously are a little bit higher. And that goes most especially for our Caribbean young people, young boys from of Caribbean origin. They tend to they are bearing the brunt of that at the moment, more so than others. Now, where does bias come in? Because we've talked about the structure and, it has to, but when there is bias involved, does it also take the length of, the 2 years before we get to that point? Or what happens when bias comes in?
So at the point of bias, so I can give you examples, real life examples.
Please do.
The point of bias is, I've taught for 14 years. The only time I've ever been threatened by a child was by a black boy.
That's interesting.
In my 14-year career. And being the mom of, being black myself, being the mom of a black boy, it's a scary experience.
Wow.
Now, when a child makes out the same, displays the same behavior to an already biased white colleague, you put fear in that person.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter the color of the skin. You've already put fear in that child, that adult or child or whoever. The bias, and more schools are beginning to, and I'm not excluding schools. I work in a school where our head of SEN, our head of behavior, are both black teachers, and over their dead body will the child be excluded for nothing. And you find that across the schools. We don't sit on our laurels and just let these things happen. We'll do what we can and everything we can to stop it.
Yeah.
But sometimes we ask our young ones to help us change the narrative. Okay.
Now, I hope you're still there.
I am.
Oh, good. Because what I was just going to mention is, you made mention of the fact that you all do everything you can to stop it. I know that the Equality Act 2010, I believe it was, requires that all schools, if I'm not wrong, should have an equalities agent, as it were. Am I right in that?
Yeah, we do.
And I just want to know how they work with the school in order to reduce, eradicate, and to, identify where bias, for instance, comes in.
Okay, so if we come to a point where the behavior, say for example, we could go back to the point of exclusion, where behavior, the school has a governing body. On the governing body, you've got the community representatives, you've got a staff representative, you've got parental representatives, and it's not just one, it's in proportion to the number of people of pupils in the school.
Right.
So even any decision to exclude or stop the education of a child in a particular school has to go to the governing body. And on that governing body, you can't have everyone who's biased against that child. There'll be a weight of evidence to support why the decision is being made, or the decision we've come to this point.
Right.
So the school would have to give evidence of its intervention. Now, if the parent is not happy with what happened, you can then take it to the local authority. But the governing body, you've got parental, and you know, before the decision is made, it's not a decision that's made
lightly.
Without the consent of the parents. The parents would have been invited to the school so many times to have a conversation. And the decision to on the day of the governing, if there's on the day of a disciplinary hearing as with the behavior, the parent will be involved. The parent will be there and will be invited, you know, by the governor to say, this is why we've come to this decision. I hope you can understand. It's not done. It's not done to, it's done with.
Okay.
You know.
So how does the equalities agent or rep, as I said earlier?
The person will be in the governing body meeting.
Okay. So then how do they work with the school? What are some of the things that they do with the school, for instance, to ensure that, you know, the threat of bias is reduced? Because obviously there's a lot of...
They look at our records, they monitor our processes. So what are pastoral policies?
Okay.
How their pastoral policies work with the children.
Right.
They speak to the children themselves. The children are, children are facing, they're very, very honest.
Yeah.
They will give their opinion, and they'll give a very honest opinion. And at that point, you know, Ofsted might also, if it's an issue that requires inspection by Her Majesty's Service, then we will get an inspection. So the school records that looks to an Ofsted inspection doesn't just come and look at the teaching. It looks at how children are treated, how they're excluded, what staff are employed, and what's the racial distribution of the staff. Everything is looked at.
Okay, thank you so much for that. Now, I want us to come forward a bit and look at, you know, like I said earlier, what COVID has thrown up so many things. And one of the things that COVID exposed quite considerably was the impact of COVID, I say inverted commas, the impact of COVID on the BAME community, members of the BAME community.
Yeah.
And within that, because of the impact, those who work at the front line at the hospital, for instance, one of the things that was raised is that they should all go through risk assessment. Now, the BAME Ed are also suggesting that same process should be applicable for teachers as well. What are your thoughts on that?
I would agree because I would agree largely because we health-wise there are some health inequality issues that this pandemic has raised.
Right.
And every member of staff, and not regardless of ethnicity, as a teacher, I'll speak for us as a body. We should be more. We should be more protected.
Okay.
It was announced yesterday that, you know, teachers should take care of us going abroad, just so that we won't have staff shortages, because staff shortages mean school closures, and school closures will negatively impact our education. So yes, more measures should be taken for us. We are being listened to. We've spoken up. We've discussed issues around. So initially we were told you can't wear PPE. Well, we've argued the case that we want to wear PPE.
So I was going to ask you about that. When a teacher wants to wear PPE, for instance, in the classroom, what are we talking about? Are we looking at a face shield, or are we looking at some kind of, you know, a full outfit, for instance?
No, so we are advocating at the very minimum a face shield.
Okay. But then, you know, how then would you be able to have the social distancing figured out in class? Because sometimes as a teacher...
We don't know it all yet, and school leaders are working on it. So we're looking at one-way corridors, we're looking at staggered lunch times, teaching in bubbles. So we're going to teach a whole year. So if a teacher's teaching year 7, that teacher's only teaching year 7 the whole day, and they stay within that space. We're not mixed in as we would normally in school. The primary focus would be the teaching. We are distancing so we're moving some of our equipment around, we're moving our shelving around to give us more space within the classroom. So if you imagine in your classroom, your teacher would walk around and talk. Now we can't really do that. We can't have any touching or anything like that. We can, discussions, I'm thinking for my school, discussions, my school and schools around are asking about the wearing of gloves, just anything that will protect us. Teachers want to go back to work. We're happy to go back to work. We just don't want to be put at risk when we go and go about and do our job.
Of course. But, I understand what you're saying there about the PPEs that is required and the discussion that's being had. Again, just going to flip it back, again, mainly because I'm just looking at what BAME Ed, this report that they had out about, the impact of COVID and the adoption of risk assessment and so on. And one of the issues that they raised, again, it goes back to bias. It's about representation. And where they were saying that, they again, teachers, we need to see more black teachers, young black children need to see representation in that arena also. Would you say that there isn't sufficient representation within the education system?
There isn't.
Okay.
There isn't, but I have a few black male colleagues,
right,
who are qualified,
mm-hmm,
who are invited to teach, who refuse to teach.
Oh.
Just because teaching is a difficult job. It is a hard job.
Okay.
It's a challenging job.
All right. So they don't have the calling as you do.
Teaching is available. There's a cry for teachers to come into the classroom, but it's not an easy job.
Okay.
It's not an easy job
Okay.
because it requires a lot of commitment.
Fair enough. It requires a lot of commitment and it requires a lot of love. You have to love it to do it, I would imagine, because it involves, putting so much into others. But let me ask this. I probably didn't frame that right when I was saying. They also made mention of the fact of representation at the level of decision making. Would you say that because of that lack of representation at decision making, it makes the job harder? For instance, for those, your colleagues that you speak of that can do the job, but are now saying they don't want to do the job. Is it because they don't feel that they're supported and they don't have sufficient representation to be able to provide them with that?
You hit the nail on the head there, yes. It is. There is bias there is bias, especially in the senior level positions.
Okay.
Of the percentage of head teachers in this country, only 1% are black or minority background. The situation we find ourselves in has raised up a lot of questions, and a lot of schools are looking at themselves very, very closely. I've been on a few training sessions. I've been offered more training opportunities than I've ever been in my life.
Okay. Why? Why?
Because schools are looking at themselves a lot more closely.
Okay.
Where you have a school that the population is 95% BAME and the senior leadership are nothing like it.
Oh, wow.
And it will raise questions.
Yes.
So schools are looking at themselves a lot more closely. But what I say as a black teacher, a black female teacher, it's a hard job. And it will require a lot more of us. But as you perfect your skills and as you refine your skills, you make yourself available for when those positions come up. They don't come up very often. They will start to come up more often, but you have to be ready for it.
Okay.
You have to put yourself in the right place for it. I made a move away from where I live for that very reason. I wanted my work to count. I wanted it to count to the people that matter to me. So I like to teach in schools where there are more black children because I know I have a lot more to offer them. I am I saw the difference he made when I lived in the Midlands, and I knew how much our black children endeared to me as a teacher. So I thought, oh, I could do more about this. And in the school where I work now in London, I've taught in selective school. I've taught in school that's 99% white. I didn't like it. So I go and teach with black kids. So it means that I can stay with them. I can teach them after school. I can intervene with their parents. I could talk to the parents, speak to the parents in a language that they understand. I could do more for the community. For me, it's not just a job, it's a community job. It's that I'm there representing and speaking up for the community and standing up for my community. It takes a lot out of me, 12 hours a day, but I'm happy to do it.
Like you said, it's a calling for you, so it does make it that much easier. And with it being a calling, with the experience that you have, you've been in the industry for 14 years, as you've said. You've made brief mention of the experience that you had, the unfortunate experience that you had with one of your students. But have you had any experience of bias with your colleagues? Would you say that you have also been affected by racism in any way?
Oh wow! Do you want? I stopped keeping tally. I think after the second month.
Okay, so let's look at. Okay, let's look at the micro.
I had a teacher, a colleague, at one of my second job, so my first leadership position.
Yeah.
Who was going over to interview colleagues to interview future candidates. And he came back and I asked for feedback. So how was the lesson? Oh, and he said, oh, they were niggers, and I wasn't interested.
Sorry.
I know. I went to complain to the head of school. I complained to the deputy head and checked this, the on-site chaplain, and nothing was done.
Nothing whatsoever.
Nothing.
Wow.
We're still teaching.
Wow. Okay. So that took me back for a moment there.
I know it's taking a lot of people back. We go through that. But for me, I had a goal in that job. And that's what keeps me going. I have a goal. There were children I was responsible to there. And there were things I wanted to learn from that position. Like I said, it was my first leadership position. And I knew immediately that this wasn't the first time I was going to deal with it. And I hope that it would be the last time. And so far, it's been the last time I've dealt with that kind of overt racism. But it kept me going.
Okay.
I measured my steps, and I was able to move on. I could have written a complaint, but maybe I should have. But I don't have that kind of fight in me. I'd rather fight for the child than to fight the system in that way. Some people are built to fight the system. I'm not built to fight the system. I know my place, so I fight for the children.
I hear you.
There's no pouring water onto stone. But I will say this though: the head teacher, in all my 14 years, the head teacher was walked out of the school. He was kicked out of the school disgracefully on a parents' evening.
Wow.
The school was in steady decline under his leadership, and so it says a lot.
Okay, so something happened eventually.
Something happened eventually. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's encouraging to hear. So over this time, you say you don't fight the system. So I would imagine that you have developed some kind of skills and ways of overcoming and dealing with this. I would like you to share that with us, because maybe a newly qualified teacher may watch this one day, or is watching right now, and just thinking, or somebody's going through this at the moment, at this moment in time. What are some of the things that you have picked up over the years to help you overcome, survive the system, navigate your way through?
Okay, there's not a one-size-fits.
No.
From my experience, I just learned. I refined my skills. So when I got into the school that I experienced the racism, there wasn't a Key Stage 3 curriculum.
Okay.
I learned to write a curriculum. I self-taught. I improved myself to the point where I walk into a job and I am offered it even before I've spoken. In all my years of teaching, every time I've
Wow.
And that's just, I've always just walked into a job I want. Not a job I'm given. I've always walked into the jobs that I want.
And that's because you're preparing yourself.
I'm preparing myself. So if you come into my living room now, there's A-level statistics textbooks, there's textbooks on pastoral leadership, which is what I'm going into, and there's training sessions, and I'm studying. I'm reading because I know that in teaching there is discrimination, but people cannot turn down excellence. They cannot, because it's a shortage profession.
Thank you.
So
Thank you very much for that.
At your job, teachers will snap you off. Schools will snap you off, sorry.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. And that is so encouraging to hear that. And I love that line. Yes, biases exist, racism exists, but people cannot turn down excellence. Thank you for taking the stand. So let's come forward now and let's look at the current conversation that's happening. First and foremost, I think the biggest fear in this conversation at the minute is that children have missed so much of school. They literally missed, the whole term from during the Easter, just before Easter and after Easter, and then, summer is here. So they've literally missed like a whole half of their school year. In your experience and with children, do you think, especially the younger ones, do you think it's going to have such a grave effect on their learning, or they'll be able to pick up when we do resume?
I think it's up to the parents and it's up to the school. I'm a teacher and a parent.
All right.
So the things we teach them, we don't teach them once. The school curriculum is set out that we build on prior knowledge.
Right.
For example, let's say multiplication. A child would have learned addition and multiplication. They would have learned different ways around it. But multiplication is the same all the way to year 6. You just add a layer and a layer and a layer onto it.
Okay.
So whatever they've learned, you can build on. And there are out-of-school learning opportunities, not necessarily explicit, that parents can do to help their children catch up on their education. So, for example, in the car, when I'm traveling with my children, I'm a math teacher. We do the times table. I just throw out numbers. We do it. We do a bit of thinking. We do a bit of spelling. Car journeys don't have to be just sitting out of the window.
But you're a teacher, so it's easy for you to throw the timetables at them.
No,
because
but I learned education from my father, who's not a teacher.
Okay.
My father was an engineer before he retired, and our car journeys in Nigeria growing up were such because he was conscious parenting from his part. He took me up and down the south and the southeast of Nigeria, just showing me the geography. So he took me from Lagos to Benin to Calabar, and I learned geography. I didn't learn geography in Nigeria from a textbook. I didn't learn erosion from a textbook. I learned it from car journeys with my dad.
Wow.
Same thing I do with my children now. I bundle them into the car. Today we're going to go nowhere, Belgium is. Tomorrow we're going to go nowhere, Wales is. Today we want to know where Manchester is. Education doesn't have to be formal only. There are informal ways.
Practical.
And what those do is they connect the neurons in our brain cells to develop them such that they don't have to be force-fed the education. When you have a child that's mature, that's open to learn, that is ready, that's always learning, when you sit that child in the classroom, you spend less time feeding them the curriculum because they get it one time. It's a muscle. The more you use it, the better it becomes.
Wow. Thank you very much. So then, they can still pick up for the younger ones. But what about those who are at that crucial stage? We're talking about the results at the moment, and I want us to look at that from different angles. Those who didn't get to sit those exams in this season that they should have sat exams. We've got, we've been having the conversation with the Scottish situation. First of all, let's talk about those children who didn't get to sit those exams and, are now being given grades.
So ourselves in. Like I mentioned to you before, and it's been mentioned on the news many times. The results are based on formula, the results this year. But also in previous years, the grading system is set up by Ofcall, and it's based on the paper they sit.
Right.
Now, I don't want to come across as insensitive, and I hope I don't. If you've been given a grade and you find yourself not having the grade you want, there's an opportunity to resit.
Okay, yeah.
Autumn.
Okay.
Yes, you might lose some months, but so does everyone else.
So if you're not happy with the grade at the moment and you feel that you should have done better, you can resit it and get the grade that you think you want.
You can appeal in the first place. You can appeal that grade in the first place. And there will be a body of evidence from your school. Now, I can, if I narrate my own situation, as head of maths, I just took it upon myself, as I do, to know every child in my year group. I just know them. In year 11, I start rehearsing their names because I drop into their lessons, I look through their books, I look through their mock results, I moderate them. I do this every time. I should be able to, I feel as my responsibility, I should be able to tell you about every child that's my responsibility in mathematics in my school. So before you get assessed the grade, so when I came to the point of assessment, I was able to, and I was told this by, I work in a multi-academic trust.
Right.
That, people were just staggered as to the wealth of knowledge I knew about the children inside and outside of the classroom. I knew every child. I knew why that child got a grade 4. I knew why that child wasn't powerful because I queried their teachers and they report back to me. So at the point we get to where we're giving out, when I was making the grade predictions, I've done it based on their mock grades. I'd also done it based on the percentage improvement of each child. So if a child had improved consistently 10% at the end of each exam, I could tell easily that child would be within 10% improvement, give or take, of the next grade. If the child had steadily declined, I gave that grade. I didn't inflate my figures. Where a child finds difficulties, where they're expecting a teacher to inflate figures, and we can't do that. It just speaks ill of our integrity as a people. So this is where your stats come in. Remember when I spoke about stats earlier?
Yes,
I know where you should be. I know what grade you should be getting.
Wow. So you go back to their stats, that was 5 years ago.
Exactly. So I had a child who at the end of year 9 was already getting a grade 9 in every test. She was getting a grade 9. When her results come, if they give her an 8, I will stand with that child and defend that child. Like, no, she's been getting a grade 9 and I've got the evidence to back it up. I've got her mock papers, I've got her results, which are regularly moderated internally and externally to back up those. Now, where a child who has a poor attendance, who's got a grade 2 at the last month, and is expecting me to predict a grade 3, I'm sorry, I'm not going to do that.
Okay. Thank you for that. Now, I want you to help us understand something, because there's been so many different strands in this conversation. There's been the whole, first of all, because in our conversation before today, you told me about the structure that exists when it comes to our exams. Tell us about how that process works. Primarily for in non-pandemic seasons, what the standard procedure would be for our when our children take exams, for instance, how that is marked and so on.
Okay, so this is a picture. When at the end of the exam, so say you're having a geography exam this morning, an English exam.
Yeah.
At the end of that exam on that day, the school's exams officer has to, by dedicated courier, send off those marks.
The scripts.
That day.
Yeah.
It doesn't even go to the next day. Send it off, no matter what time of day it finishes, send it off to the exam board. There are centers, student centers, up and down the country, where those papers are scanned to computer little machines.
Okay.
And there are exceptions where children have I'm trying to find the right word to use. Have a different, not a different paper, so they have different color paper, different size font size paper because of their learning issues.
Okay.
Those special center papers, those get sent off to the specialist markers.
Right.
Now, every exam board has groups of markers who have gone to training, who've gone to standardization, and I'll go back. So the papers get scanned in. Now, before when the papers get scanned in, the papers have a barcode. It's got no name, it's got nothing, it's just got a barcode that links to that question. Now, the system is designed that it goes into, and the paper gets chopped up. So, for example, in mathematics, I've also been a math examiner. You might have a question 4. That question 4 has a 4A, 4B, and 4C. I've been trained to mark question 4A and 4B. So I get a proportion, at least 20,000 of question 4A and 4B, because the exam company has taught me how to mark question 4A and 4B. So I will mark all of question 4, and I might get 20,000 responses of question 4A and 4B.
Right.
And then up and down the country that goes on. And each time I'm marking, the barcode is allocated. That barcode that came with that exam paper is allocating the mark to that barcode.
Okay, so you can't read the name of the students, you don't know who you're marking. And so you talk about if it had question 4, A part A, B, and C, and you're marking A and B, who marks C? And who's going to mark question 3?
In another exam team, so we have teams, you might have over 200 teams up and down the country.
So effectively what you're saying is that the answers that the students give are divided up amongst the different teams around the country to mark them. So no one specific person marks an entire paper for a student. And even when they're marking a barcode, and there's no name that, says this is from, that kind of tells you the identity of the child, for instance.
Absolutely. And as you mark, as an examiner, you constantly get fact-checked by a team leader. That team leader has another team leader.
Oh, wow. So that's quite a process right there that, protects and safeguards. I would imagine that's the intention. So that's done, but then students in this dispensation will not have that, are not having that privilege at the moment to go through that process. So then, the conversation was, the other strand of the conversation was that some students felt that those of them that come from the BAME background were probably going to be marked down by their teachers, or they're going to have their grades, lesser grades than those who are not from a BAME background in this current dispensation that we're in. I know you've told us about the process that you followed, because you take time out to look after your children, to get to know them individually in more ways than probably most teachers will do. Now, that argument about being allocated grades because of because in this situation, it's not a barcode situation, it's a name situation in somebody who knows you. How does that argument fare? How does it stand with you?
You have a right of appeal. And that right of appeal is, you can do through the school so far as it is now in England.
Right.
You have the right of appeal through the school to the exam board to say, this is why I don't feel I deserve this grade.
Right.
Now the onus is then on the school to provide the evidence to support that argument, and every case will be considered.
Okay. So even though you've been given the grades now, you can still go ahead and as it were, appeal against that. We're seeing the Scottish situation.
Can I just say something?
Please do.
Something that came up in the news yesterday, and not from the teaching group. Sadly, I'll just get you the figures because I don't want to misquote, but it was on the news yesterday. Teacher predictions were overinflated 75% of the wrong grades are usually over predictions. And I think what some children were hoping for were over predictions.
Oh, wow. That's so interesting. But, you know, we've seen the Scottish situation at the moment where they have had to, you know, and their situation is unique in the sense that the grades were given, allocated according to, say, where you lived. So if you lived in a deprived area, you were given a lesser of a grade because the children who came from those deprived areas tend to score less. And for those who did better, generally, they were given more. But we do know that there are one or two students within, there are some that comes through from these deprived areas that do very well. And so we've seen the argument on the Scottish exam results, and they have had to change that. You know, talk to us about that. What went wrong there? And you know, should they have waited for the appeal as opposed to just changing it according to the outcry? Or?
Okay, it might be the same thing that ends up in England, but until our first set of A-level results come out tomorrow, we won't know. Now, here's what I can say about the grading system.
Yeah.
It's difficult, it's very unusual, possible for a school to outrank its previous results over time by 10% in one, just like that. It's not impossible, but it's very rare.
Okay.
Because you have a history of results. Going back to those stats results, we know what grade you came in at maths. We know what you've reported over the years. We know what you reported at the end of year 7. We know what you reported at the end of year 8. We know we've seen the steady increment. We've seen the declines as well. So from the point where you submitted your mock predictions to us in February, to now say to us, oh, everyone is suddenly gone 2 grades above, Priscilla, surely that will raise questions, won't it?
Well, yeah. But then it will raise questions, but then in normal circumstances, it can happen because somebody can buckle down and work hard.
For the whole year to buckle down at once, it will start. Having said that, if that is as it has been in Scotland, where the grades have now been put in line with what the teacher predicted, I fear that if the teachers have over-predicted, the children might find themselves at a disadvantage at the next level of education.
Okay, when you say at a disadvantage, what do you mean? Because obviously, if they've been over predicted as it was, it means that for some they will get into the university of their choice.
Then what happens to them at the end of the first year?
Well, you're the teacher, so I need you to help me to understand what would happen to them. Because as a parent, we'll all be like, "Yay, we're gonna get into what we wanted." But you know, as a teacher, what do you foresee?
So, will that child be able to cope with the next level?
Okay.
Let me come back to GCSE, for example.
Yeah, please.
So with GCSE, let's talk about the GCSE to A-level prediction. If a child has been awarded a grade 6, I know the child is a grade 6 working ability student, and they've been awarded a grade 7. A grade 7 means they can come and do A-level maths.
Yeah.
I know that at grade 6, he can't complete the square. There's some certain topics in maths that he just wouldn't understand working at grade 6.
Yes.
So he's not fit. It's A-level maths. So yes, you might have got that in grade 7 on paper, but it just tells me that you're going to struggle. That by the October half term, you're struggling to do even the most basic concepts at A-level maths.
Wow. So in effect, what you're saying is that, you know, it could have an impact on the children being better prepared for their next stage.
It could have an impact, and it will have an impact on being better prepared for the next stage. It's not, you know, the next stage is crucial because if you've been over-predicted a grade that you're not deserving of, and you find yourself at the next level and you can't cope, then what happens to the rest of that experience? It becomes marred. You don't get the same enjoyment, and it becomes more of a struggle.
Yeah.
And you don't want to struggle down the line. That's why there are targets, attainment targets, so that when you meet that target, you're better The grading system is a reflection of your mastery of those grades at that level. Now, while you might not have mastered it now, you might have mastered it by December.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You might not have mastered it in June. You might not master it till next year, but come next year, you would have mastered it.
I see. I hear you now. I get your point. Now, because time is no longer on our side, I feel like we could be talking forever. Now, tell me something. Tomorrow, we're looking forward to the results here in England. We've seen what happened with the Scottish situation. What are your thoughts on what we're likely to see here in England with our results coming out?
I foresee, having listened to some A-level students, a lot of students will be inclined to take the resit options because they want grades worthy that they are deserving of. They want to be able to say, I earned this. It wasn't given to me. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
People want ownership of their achievements.
Now that's so honorable because you would have thought that the kids would be happy to have not sat those exams and they've been giving grades, but you're saying that a lot of them are wanting the resit.
Yeah, because it's validation, it's self-validation, isn't it?
Yeah.
Being able to say I achieved this, this is what I did. People don't want things just. Not everyone wants things just handed to them, especially when you're going up to university.
Yes.
I think higher mastery. So I would hazard a guess and say that quite a few children might be going for the resit option because now they know that there's anything can happen at any time, and they want to be better prepared for their futures.
That's that's incredible. It's incredible to hear that a lot of them are going to want to actually sit the exams. But do you think we're likely to have the similar conversation as our Scottish relatives did?
I don't know. I can't tell. There's nothing. I've been checking my school website every day, waiting for the exam downloads, but it's been completely blackout.
Oh wow!
So by 6 o'clock tomorrow, it'll be getting
it'll be coming through.
I see what the result. It's been completely blackout.
Oh wow, interesting. So we've talked with you've shared with us, which I thought was just so powerful. How you have ensured that jobs look for you within, and you're not having to chase these jobs. So I just wanted to, our question today was, how do we get what we expect to achieve our dreams? That was our question today. What would be your advice to parents for their children, and what would be advice to the children as well that may come across this on working towards getting their dreams? Because we know that you are attaining your dreams, for instance, by making sure that you're flying the flag for excellence and doing that. So what should parents and children be doing in order to achieve their dreams within our education sector?
Okay, so we won't get anything, but we will take everything. My point. Nothing will ever be given to us, and if it's given, then it loses its value.
Yeah.
But we will take everything that's available. One of the things I really like to say to parents is take advantage of out-of-school learning opportunities. Go to museums. Go to state houses. Visit. When I take my children to museums, sometimes I'm staggered because it's like, oh God, we're the only ones of color here. I did it with my first child 20 years ago. I have another set of children who are teenagers now, and I still find that. And that's not to say that it doesn't happen, but it's not our everyday. Take advantage of the out-of-school learning opportunities. Make yourselves available for work experiences. Network and get your children those work experiences when you can. Immediately you can't start getting them those work experiences. Also, if you can, focus more on their education. So don't spend £400 on an Xbox when you could spend £400 on a laptop or what does this child need to do. So in case of that Xbox, your child wants to do drama, put them in drama school, pay for the drama school, attend every of their performances, make yourselves available, come to parents' evening, dialogue with your teachers. You know, it's conscious parenting. It's not passive. And I know that with our community, our economic situations find us working 2, 3, 4 jobs. And it is hard. I know what it's like. I fully understand what it's like. But also, there are gains that we can make. Please don't miss parents' evening. Parents' evening is where you get to meet the teachers. They know the parents who are ready to work with. So I was speaking with you the other day. I have a list of students, of students to call to invite in for extra tuition.
Right.
And I've called everyone on the list. Most of the black parents I called didn't respond immediately. One particular family, which is most heartbreaking, child has a lot of promise. And I discussed with her, you know, the possibility of coming into school for extra tuition. Or she says, oh, I can't come. My mom needs me to babysit.
Oh.
I then called mom and dad. I made 4 phone calls, 2 text messages, not with hidden numbers, no response. This is free tuition,
Wow.
£30 an hour for extra maths, and the parents just haven't taken advantage of.
Wow. But you were offering it to them for free?
For free.
Wow. That's unbelievable.
So I understand the difficulties when you're trying to make ends meet financially, but also I'm just saying my closing message to parents is, what does my child need? You know, that extra, that Xbox is the price of a trip, of a day trip, to go and see things, to travel, see the world. I mean, right now my children are on holiday, but we're catching up on schoolwork, and while I was working, they were working, so I wasn't always there to supervise them.
Yeah.
So now we spend the mornings in our house. The TV doesn't come on till 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It's the school holidays, but they're having science division. You know, they've just been gifted their 2 laptops, so that's what they're doing. The laptop goes up at 3 o'clock, so you have to finish all your work by 3 o'clock. It's conscious. There's also opportunities for after-school learning and enjoyment. We enjoy ourselves. We go off, you know, watch movies, we enjoy. There's a balance in everything, but sometimes I feel that because of the guilt of not being there, we give our children what they want, but not what they need.
You know, a lot of parents are you know, at one point or another have been guilty of that, you know, giving their children what they want and not necessarily what they need. Pamela, I could go on and on, like I said earlier, because I did have a question that popped up in my mind, you know, and I was just thinking, well, the parents, but let me just ask it anyway, very quickly before we go. You made mention about the fact that the children wanted to do the resit. Some of them would want to do that, but that's subject to the approval of the school, right? Do you think that most schools will be prepared, will be open to that, or they would just, you know, want to sort of say, hey, let's go? I know it would have been, you know, available standard anyway, but given the situation, would that have any bearing, or would it just still be standardly available?
It will be standardly available. It might not be available to all, but it will be. What we're looking at is possibly schools going into partnership with 6th form colleges, so that the teachers are available to them, to teach them, to prepare them for those exams.
Okay, all right, fantastic. So that option is there if they need it, possibly will be there. Well, Pamela, time doesn't permit us, but I say you have been absolutely amazing. I am inspired listening to you. And let me just say, you know, let me just very quickly touch on what some people said on Facebook before we take off, because I think it's important. So on Facebook, I have excellent work is what Priscilla Nwikpo is saying. St. Francis Oladimeji is saying, well done and all blessings. Bias occur, Joy Obidon Okoro says, biases occur, but people can't turn down excellence. You know that line that you spoke. She She repeated that. And of course, the other one, education does not have to be formal. While in the car with children, children can learn informally. Well, thank you so much. It's been absolutely inspiring listening to you. And thank you for all that you do for the children that come your way to impact them for a much better future. I really appreciate you taking up your calling and getting into doing what you were called to do. Thank you, Pamela, for being here today. Appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Bye.
Well, for everybody else that's listening, that's been, listening to Pamela. Pamela Adudu, fantastic teacher. She's been in the game for 14 years and she has been doing what she was called to do. And as she says, biases may exist, but you can't turn down excellence. I'm going to leave you with that tonight. And I hope that you'll join me again next week when I look forward to having conversations with more people that are doing fabulous things in their various fields of endeavor. In the meantime, stay cool. Stay cool and safe. I'm sweating in the meantime, but I really appreciate all of you joining in. I appreciate all of you that are sharing the shows on the social media. I appreciate all of you for what you do for me. I may have not met you or seen you, but I'm grateful. For the meantime, enjoy your evening. Take care. Until next week. Bye-bye.